Hello, everybody. It is Sunday, October 19th. I'm Regina here, Women's Personal Finance. We've got Angela, also of Women's Personal Finance, and Jillian Johnsrud here to talk to us today. Jillian is just finished up, I think, book tour for a newly released book called Retire Often, which me and Angela have both had a chance to take a look at, and I'm working my way through right now. And we've known Jillian in some capacity for quite a while now. Angela probably longer than me, but it was a good opportunity to bring Jillian here. Um, when I get done doing this intro, I'm going to also drop a web form into a book up. Angela, it's
Oh,
going to
that's just a link to the book.
I'm going to drop a web form to a giveaway. We have 2 copies of the book that we're giving away right now as well. So while you're sitting in on this tonight, you can also enter to get a copy of that book sent out to you. So I will pass that off to you, Angela and Jillian, and get that going.
Yeah.
Actually, my book kind of matches your guys' background. I feel like we're like color coordinated
Oh
here.
gosh, we totally
look how
are.
good that looks.
Very much in our color scheme.
Welcome.
That was intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Told my designer.
Match WPF. It's very important. But yeah, we've known Jillian for, I don't know, a bunch of years. And most recently got to see her in person at FinCon in Portland in the, war-ravaged center of the Pacific Northwest.
We wore Kevlar. It was fine.
But yes, it was wonderful to see her in person and got to actually attend one of her book signings and asked her to come talk to our community and got to listen to her on the big stage at FinCon too, talking about this topic. So excited to have her here to talk specifically with WPF about career breaks, mini retirements, sabbaticals, whatever you want to call it. But basically giving you inspiration and ideas around like how the heck do you take a break when you're still working and not yet at financial independence. So welcome, Jillian. If you want to give a little background on yourself for everyone here, that would be lovely.
Yeah. So I started with this idea of mini retirements when I was like 19. But me and my spouse at the time, we had like $55,000 of debt, and we both chose low earning professions. So that was like a really winning combination. Um, so we didn't really anticipate being able to retire early. That I remember my first like ambitious goal was like if like by 60 we could be able to retire, that seemed so magical. So yeah, we kind of hatched this plan of like, how could we take these little breaks, these little mini retirements, throughout our working career? Because despite uh, our poor financial life choices, we still had these really big goals and dreams and stuff that we wanted to do that we didn't really want to wait till we were 65 to do them. So we kind of started sprinkling these in, and now I've done a dozen of them. And ended up becoming financially independent anyways. So I'm really happy that I didn't. It sounds weird, but I'm happy I didn't necessarily learn about financial independence until I was nearly there, because I think I am a person who likes to have a goal and a finish line, and I think I might have pushed towards that finish line, and perhaps abandoned this plan that was working really well for me. And it turns out many retirements got us to financial independence much faster than if we wouldn't have taken them. So it would have been like penny wise and pound foolish for
And
us,
I
for
just want
sure.
to pause to, just for anyone watching now or later, financial independence, for anyone who is not super familiar with the term, that simply means that you no longer have to work ever again. So FIRE is financial independence, retire early, but not everybody wants to retire early. But everyone at some point, I think their goal would be to hit financial independence and hopefully by choice choose to stop working rather than by circumstance. So FI is really just the point where you have enough money and investments that it will continuously pay enough to support your lifestyle. So just for anyone who isn't super familiar or newer to the term of financial independence. I just wanted to start with that. So carry on.
Yeah, that's it. That's kind of me. And then I wrote a book about it. I've been writing about this subject for 10 years online. Um, yeah, did a lot, hundreds and hundreds of one-on-one coaching calls and group coaching and spoke at events and wrote about it and did podcasts about it. And then finally I was like, let's just let's put all this in easily packaged,
So,
cute little book.
so do you feel it was always focused around the mini retirement part? Like I know you and I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't listen to podcasts and things. So like I think
Yeah.
like a lot of times I've missed for some people like what the actual big platform message is, and then I just
Mm,
know them a little bit different. So was it always
yeah.
like mini retirement focused?
No, not necessarily. I didn't start writing until after I was financially independent. And so a lot of my writing was and continues to be what am I learning now? What am I figuring out? What are the thoughts that are rolling through my head? I have a newsletter that is rather unhinged because it's basically that. These are random things I've probably thought about over the last week. And when do I send it? I don't know. It's a surprise to all of us. What's it about? No one knows. It's like a little grab bag of randomness. Um, but it was a lot of when I first started writing, it was a lot about like intentional living and kind of the like what's next. So we hit financial independence. We weren't working. We're on a mini retirement. What am I learning now? What am I figuring
Oh.
it out now? But because we had taken a lot of mini retirements on the journey there, it was something that I saw the value in and a lot of people were curious about. So I did a lot of writing about that, but that was by no means the only thing I focused on in the beginning
So
or
can
now.
you define the mini retirement for us, since that's kind of the big overarching topic at this point and with the book, and
Yeah.
we're using the phrase, but I'm sure everybody listening is not fully familiar.
Yeah, I define a mini retirement with three different components. I think it should be a month or longer. I find a month is kind of the minimum effective dose, especially if you want to recover from burnout, to really disconnect, to deeply rest. A month is also a great time frame to do something really cool. Like you could hike the Camino in a month. Like you can do a big road trip in a month. You can plant a huge garden in a month. Um, and so the second one is stepping away from your primary career or your 9 to 5. And that might be negotiating that time off. That might be separating from the company. And the third is to focus on something that matters to you, something that's meaningful. So mini retirements can be a lot of different things. Um, it could be something, a fun adventure like traveling, but it could also be like, my mom has Alzheimer's and I need to like be there to help transition her. And you take that time to do this thing that's really meaningful to you.
So for you, a mini retirement is not just I have a month to do whatever. Like it sounds like your concept of a mini retirement is something that like has some kind of direction to make the time worth doing, or do you think you can have a mini retirement and all it is just like I'm not gonna go to work and I'm gonna see how each day happens?
Mm, I encourage people, even if your goal is just to rest and recover from burnout, I encourage people to like split the difference. Um, I find if they go from super highly structured, maybe they're working 60 hours a week, to no structure at all, it's a little unnerving for a lot of people, especially after the first 5 or 6 days. Um, and so whatever that is, split the difference. If you were working 8 hours a day, plan 4 hours that are a little bit structured, even if that's active rest. So having a plan of like, I'm going to read books, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to have lunch with my mom, I'm going to call a friend, I'm going to take a bath. Like, have this list of these are activities that I do that are restful for me and plan out about 4 hours a day of those. And then the rest of the hours can be who knows what. But I do find when you have those active rest activities listed out, it prevents this phenomenon of people kind of have these like vague ideas of like goals they might have during their mini retirement, but there's this sense of, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing the wrong thing. And it gives this little bit of uneasiness. Like they're like, ah, I figured I would like declutter my house, but I also want to rest, but I also want to read. And whichever one they choose, they're doing the wrong one. So having a little bit of an intention and a plan and giving yourself a little bit of structure usually helps. I call it like unnecessary emotional suffering. It helps ease some of that unnecessary emotional suffering.
I've read enough of the book to know that part of what you're talking about is not just using mini retirements to rest, for example, but also using them as periods to make your next phase, be that new job, but going back to the same job, whatever it is, but like to make that even more effective and fulfilling for you, or potentially to spur growth and being able to reach out into new areas.
Mhm.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think if I were talking to like a 22-year-old, um, I think this idea of we're going to front load like 10, 12, 14 years of education, and then you're going to have a 40-year career in one career field with one company. I don't think it's going to happen anymore. That the odds of that are getting lower and lower, and the reality is most people have small career shifts or transitions. They need to add more training, more education over the span of 40 years. And I find mini retirements, especially for women, extra important because statistically, we carry so much additional labor at home and in our families and in schools and in our communities that there is this discrepancy between how much additional training that we can have access to just because of like the time burden versus male counterparts. And so being more intentional of like, I'm going to carve out these mini retirements to take extra classes, to read extra books, to do more certification. Um, and it might just be to keep on pace with guys who don't have to carry as much burden at home and like with their extended family.
We do have two people who are, I think, under 25 in the audience. So
Mhm.
actually, so this is
Nice.
there. We have a couple younger
Yep.
folks here. So thinking in that frame is good for them too. Um, I'm when you're talking about this, I'm wondering and also hearing like an idea for me of, I think maybe if people thought about this earlier, women especially, that it might also help reframe like the breaks that women may take around motherhood, and not necessarily like, or make like making it easier to look at that as a period of your overall life and career and a gap, instead of just like I stopped working for a few years, what do I do now? Like, do you
Hmm.
think that could help people break that up and like be ready to approach the next step of their life when maybe they don't want to be at home with children anymore more effectively too?
Yeah, I think using those periods to not completely disengage from your career and from your profession, but what are things that can combine both of those? And to some degree, if you have a spouse at home, that's that's carrying that load a little bit more. Like, yes, I'm going to step away for 2 years and focus on this, but like doesn't mean this is 100% my responsibility because I still want to take classes and I still want to go to networking events and I still want to go to conferences and I still want to get additional training because I'm looking ahead at when I re-enter and what's shifting in my industry from the time I've stepped away to when I might go back in, and how can I best position myself for that. So thinking about it like I'm going to step away from 2 years to be a stay-at-home parent, but maybe I'm a 90% stay at home parent. Maybe I'm an 80% stay at home parent. And maybe the other parent carries that 10 or 20%, or maybe we still invest in some childcare so that I have these opportunities to not to engage in in my career during that absence.
Jillian, you say like stay involved with your profession or career, but one of the things you also talk about a lot is using these periods to help you transition into new and sometimes
Hmm.
vastly different areas.
Yep.
So can you weave that together a little bit for me? Like, I understand staying up on training. I'm a pharmacist, for example, but
Hmm.
I'm mostly retired. There's still things I have to do to kind of continue to potentially be a pharmacist. But
Yep.
like, what if you were looking to do something completely different? Like, how might you utilize periods like this?
Yeah, I think that can be a really interesting thing to combine if we combined it with these breaks of stay-at-home parenting in whether that looks like volunteering or internships or taking classes or just having time to explore what else is out there, having good conversations. Um, One of the things I encourage like one-on-one clients if they're thinking about transitioning, look at who else you've worked with who's transitioned into a new industry and be like, hey, that's interesting. Can I buy you lunch? Like, I would love to talk about why you made that transition or how you're enjoying that, or ask, there's interesting statistics about those secondary connections. Like maybe it's not something we even need a direct connection with, but it's the friend of a friend, the coworker of a coworker that can be massively helpful in our careers. And so staying, whether that's still attending conferences or networking things, staying connected to seeing the shifts that are happening in your industry. I think what's happening right now with AI is fascinating, how it's reshaping our economy and how it's reshaping the job market, because machines are getting much better at being machines. They're becoming amazing at being machines. But I think that the inverse of that is that as people, as humans, we have to get much better at being human. Um, and it's really tough to be a human when you're burned out because you can't just like slog in and input data and run simple calculations. Like the machines are really good at that now. You have to show up full, motivated, excited, with energy, with creativity, with vision, with intuition. Like you need those really human attributes. And those I think are going to become more valuable. And a mini retirement's a really great way to tap into that. I'm not just like data entry, like I'm a human with interesting ideas and insights.
So when do you think somebody might start to like turn their wheels on that maybe it's time to start thinking about something like a mini retirement? Like what might be some signs and
Mm.
a roadmap there?
Yeah, there's a few different ways to look at it. I think in general, minimum effective dose, I would love it if people did one a decade. Whether that's in between jobs, whether that's taking a break for motherhood or for caring for parents, whether that's negotiating that off. If you're with a company for 10 years, you can probably negotiate off a mini retirement. Like you can get a month off. Um, and so one a decade is a good benchmark. Another thing I've seen just through observation, especially with one-on-one clients, is there's something about, this is especially true for women, right around 15 to 25 years of consistent hard work. The human body seems to go really well. You can push it to these kind of outer limits of our capacity for about 15 to 25 years. And then it's like, whew, we could use a breather. We're a little tired. Um, and so for a lot of women, that looks like, if they started at 15, that might be 35. If they started at 20 with like their education, that might be 40, 45. When that burnout becomes pervasive and it feels like outrunning an avalanche, which works great until one day it doesn't. Then it doesn't work at all. And so mini retirement being a little bit proactive, if you're like, oh, I might be coming up against that and I haven't taken a break, maybe start planning that like before the day the avalanche crushes you.
So how do you recognize that it's getting close?
Mm. One of the things I remember when I was like a teenager, I remember looking at people in their 40s and thinking, God, why are people in their 40s so boring? Like, just, they've got no goals, no ambition, no like zest for life, no enthusiasm, like, no optimism to like dream big dreams and have big plans. Like, they're so jaded. And then I got to my 40s and I'm like, oh, we're tired. We're just so tired. Um, and so, one of the ways to recognize burnout is think about emotionally, mentally, how you felt at like 22, 25. What was your outlook? What was your enthusiasm? What was your motivation? If a friend called at 6 o'clock and said, "Hey, I'm going to go do a pottery class tonight at 7. Do you want to join me?" Where you're like, 100% in, and let's get drinks after. And now if you got that call, you're like, oh my gosh, it's been such a long week. I just want to go home. I want to watch like Love is Blind for like 2 hours and like eat healthy snacks. Um, and so recognizing that, because I've seen with mini retirements that mental and emotional energy, like the like the time roll back with each month, they're like, oh, I'm 42. They're like, actually, this feels like when I was like in my late 30s. And then they're like, ooh, this feels like when I was in my mid 30s. They're like, oh, I feel like 31 again. Then it's like, actually, I have that like vibe of like being 27. Um, I think we acclimate to the burnout so much that we just assume it's normal. Like, we're being reasonable, we're being practical, we're being pragmatic. We've let go of foolish dreams. We're not childish anymore. We're reasonable people who like don't like to do stuff and leave the house. Um, and that might be, but it might just be we're tired and we need a break.
So you said like 1 month is where like each month you feel like more of that stuff, that feeling comes back. So what happens when you take a month and then you're like, "Oh, I need another month."
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so this is a funny thing, a funny fear that's super common of why people don't want to take mini retirements is because they're worried they'll feel better. And then to go back to work feels like you escaped prison and were in a tropical paradise, and then they grabbed you and put you in solitary confinement. They're like, it's just better to stay in prison than to like experience freedom and have to go back to prison. Thankfully, I don't see that actually transpire that much in real life. At the end of the book, step 4, I put together like 10 things you might not expect. And that's not one of them, because the reality is absence kind of makes the heart grow fonder a little bit. Once you're away from work, you start to appreciate some of the benefits that were there, whether it was the structure or the meaning or using your expertise or the collaboration. There's some things you're like, okay, I thought it was all awful, but there were some parts I like. Or you go get a different job and you find one. Oftentimes, many retirements give people like this confidence and clarity to pick better jobs afterwards. They're like, actually, now I really know what I want. I know what I need. Um, and they have like this different vibe, this different energy, and they come back rested and excited and motivated. And in a culture that's so burned out, it's really rare to see someone with like energy. Um, like I have 5 kids and I dance tango. So oftentimes like I meet lots of new people dancing tango and they'll be like, "Oh, do you have kids?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've got 5 kids." And they're like, "Wait, what? You don't seem like you have 5 kids." What does a person with 5 kids seem like?
Tired.
Tired. Tired. They seem tired. They seem like just soul crushed, barely barely able to leave the house. And I was like, "Oh, like people with 5 kids can also be happy and have hobbies and like do fun stuff and meet people."
So someone in the comments asked, have you worked with any self-employed people? How does that play out differently?
So different. So different. Better, better and worse. Worse in that there are two costs to a mini retirement. Intangible costs. It is logistically challenging and it is emotionally fraught. Like this is the price of admission. People always ask, how much money does it take or healthcare? No. Logistically challenging, emotionally fraught. When you're self employed, the price of admission is higher. It is more logistically challenging and it is more emotionally fraught because you are walking away from the thing you built yourself that you love. Um, and it could potentially burn to the ground while you're gone, is like the thought that's going through your head. Where if you work for Google and you take a month off, Google will persist. It will still exist without you for a month. Like your absence will not be the end of Google. So there's a lot more fear. It's a lot more emotionally fraught, I think, for self-employed people. But the upside is there's way more benefits. You get all of the benefits on the personal side, but in preparing your business to leave it, it really helps strengthen your business and make it much more resilient, much more efficient, kind of like a high performance machine, because it has to be, because you can't be the backlog anymore. So you have to simplify things, you have to automate things, you have to document things, you have to delegate things, all of that stuff that you should be doing, but there's like an emotional and actual cost to doing them. It provides a really clear motivation, but then, so it takes a lot more work. But then you come back to this business that maybe it took you 40 hours a week to run it before you left, and you come back and it only takes you 30 hours a week to run it. And you're like, huh, what do I do with this extra 10 hours a week? Some people are like, I'm going to go to yoga every single day. And other people are like, I had all these ideas. I had all these things that I was like, it would be so cool if we could expand this way or we could add this product. And now you have the motivation, you have the creative energy, but you also have the time to execute on those things and to build those things out. So ultimately, it ends up being really good for people's businesses. But yeah, the price of admission is higher.
I think I can speak to that a little bit just with WPF. I mean, the last 2 years, I've taken off more or less for about 2 months after Christmas and traveled internationally with my family. And me and Jillian were talking about this just a little bit before we went live. But it definitely takes like a month or two of prep work to like get in the space to feel like you can do that and like figuring out like what but a lot of it is actually like you said very productive. It's like pruning, right? Like what do
Mhm.
I actually need to be worrying about? One, like how many things am I doing because it's just what I've been doing and maybe I don't have to. So figuring out those things and then maybe figuring out ways to make them easier to do, and then you come back and you do have kind of a refreshed way of looking at things. And I think especially then, like if you are self-employed and you're able to create the space to do that regularly and make it a little bit more routine, it kind of forces this like pruning and growth system,
Mhm.
versus like just kind of getting stuck in the like this is how I do it all the time and I have a routine. So yeah, but that didn't mean for me that I was completely gone. I was still around, and that's what we were talking about, Jillian. I was asking like, it may also not be possible to like maintain being self-employed and just like be gone for a month or 3 months. And so maybe you can follow up there because you were telling me about like maybe
Yeah.
10% or like that it just may not be completely possible for independent business owners, but there are ways.
Hold on, I have a kid walking. I'm on a work call. um, Junior high gets there, embarrassed easily, so instantly runs away. Um, yeah, not only is it more logistically challenging, the ROI of going from 100% work to zero, that last 10%, there really isn't much gain. And I would say there's probably a net loss. So I encourage people to work about 10% of their normal hours. So if you work 40 hours a week, plan to work 4 hours for a couple reasons. I think you'll actually enjoy your mini retirement more because when you're self-employed, you're scared it's going to burn down. Like you're scared it's going to like huge problems are going to come, and trying not to worry that something's going horribly wrong. It takes a lot of emotional energy and it kind of pulls you out of the moment. So I find if self-employed people 30 minutes, an hour in the morning, they check in, they go through the emails, they check in with their team, they talk to the people they're delegating, whatever that looks like, they handle the most critical tasks. Then they can shut their laptop and actually enjoy the next 12 hours of their day until they check in the next day versus just like, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to look, I'm not going to look. It's probably fine. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. Maybe it's not fine. So you actually enjoy it more. And to get from that down to 4 hours to zero is so much work. Like to get it down to the 4 hours is quite a bit of work, but that last 10% is so disproportionately difficult. And I just don't know if there's much upside. Um, So, yeah, plan for that 10%, but that price of admission, logistically challenging and emotionally fraught, goes down with every single mini retirement. You figure it out. You get through the learning curve. It gets easier. You get better at it. We're not actually good at doing things we've never done. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. Um, oh, and like, I think, is that Marcia? I'm so bad at vowels.
Maisha.
I wasn't even close. Maisha, thank you. Uh, Fun thing about being dyslexic, I never actually learned to read, and I have no idea about vowels. So it's super fun. So the longest break I've taken being self-employed, um, like completely off, probably 2 or 3 months, but I've definitely had like 6 months that was very low work. Um, yeah. But I set my business up really optimizing for that outcome. And I've done it so many times. Like I said, the price of admission gets lower each time. The last time I took a month off, it was to learn tango. And honestly, I planned it like 3 days in advance. I learned that I had done like a couple tango lessons. I was like, I love this. There was this festival coming. I was like, hey, with my business, like I just finished the first half of my book. I didn't have group coaching starting for like 6 weeks. I was like, the timing's perfect. I'm just gonna take a month off. And me and my assistant in like 3 days, like knocked everything out. And I gave myself $1,000 budget and just, yeah, not emotionally fraught, very little logistics. But it was my 12th one. So
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 can we
for
talk? Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
oh, I was gonna to go back to like people who have more traditional employment because like I think that's more of our audience. Like, how do you make that happen? Both
yeah.
money wise, if you're not quite ready, are there any creative ways to do that? And like, what type of conversations might you be having with an employer if you're not utilizing like a career break that's upcoming? You know, you got laid off, and I'm just gonna take some extra time and invest in
Yeah.
myself. Like, how do you structure that? Because our system is definitely not like set up to encourage us to think in these terms, and we
Hmm.
don't budget that way typically. It's
Yeah.
pretty new for most of us.
I'll start with the employment because I think that's actually more logistically challenging. There's a lot of ways to do it affordably, so we can get to that. But people are super nervous to like if we're talking about negotiating the time off. Obviously, you could do it in between jobs or if you're laid off before you find your next one. Um, but to negotiate it off, so there's kind of two elements. And this is even if like your company doesn't have this program, no one does this. I've had a lot of clients that are like, we don't have a sabbatical program and nobody takes like that's not my company. I'm like, oh, let's still try this. Let's see how this goes. So you want to craft the story, like the pitch of what you're doing, why you're taking the time off. And there's 4 elements. It needs to be positive. You can't just be like, I'm tired of seeing y'all's faces. I need to go watch some Netflix. It has to be interesting. Binging Netflix does not count. The third one, it should be specific, which sometimes people don't think about. So instead of saying like, I want more quality time with my kids, I did a 10-week road trip once to 10 national parks with my kids in a pop-up camper. It's a very specific thing. And that leads me to the fourth one, frame it as a one-time event. Like that 10-week trip, that's not something people do every single year. Like it's kind of like hiking the Camino, you're probably doing that once. Um, so kind of frame it up as a one-time thing. You can also, it could be a one-time event or around a one-time life event, like for my honeymoon or for my 50th birthday or for my parents' 60th birthday. Like it kind of anchors it to this is a one time ask, not I'm going to be asking you every single year because I want to go to a lake house. Um, so you get those four elements, you get your story kind of put together. It doesn't have to be super long. And then the second part is think through all of the challenges that you leaving will create and brainstorm various solutions to those challenges. And the unintuitive um, part of this is I want you to vocalize all of the challenges on behalf of your boss. So you pitch them this story of like, hey, my mom and my dad, they'd always planned to like bike through Croatia when they turned 60 and they retired. And maybe my dad passed away a few years ago and my mom's turning 60. She's set to retire. I would love to do this trip with her. I'd love to take a month, bike through Croatia. I've got 1 week of PTO. I would need 3 weeks unpaid. So you pitch the story and then you say, I know that you might be concerned about this, or I know there's these challenges. I know there's this project. I know we have this deadline coming up. I know that like I'm the point on this thing. Whatever they're thinking, you vocalize it for them and then bring in the solutions. Like it shows that you have empathy. It shows that you understand the challenges. It shows that you've put in work to find the solutions, that you're not just dropping this on their plate because their plate's full. Like they have their own job to do. And you want you taking time off to be like the easiest, cheapest, simplest solution, especially compared to replacing you.
So another question in the chat is saying, I have the option to take unpaid time off using FMLA, up to 80 hours a month. We have the cushion to live off without a week or two of my pay, but I can't bring myself to indulge in that rest time. I feel like you have a lot of thoughts.
So my follow-up question would be, are you taking the time but not resting, or you can't take the time because you can't indulge in giving yourself the time? So what can answer that? But I will do a little side tangent to FMLA. It's not something I put in the book because I had to make the book very short and there was lots of things I wanted to say. But there is, I always get questions like, and the question boils down to, is mental health health? Like, is it real health? Does it matter? Is it important enough for me to use FMLA? And yeah, it is. Uh, but especially sometimes men, but especially women, I get the pushback of like, but I'm not dying yet. Like, I'm still showing up. It's hard. Yeah, I'm having panic attacks. Yes, I have existential dread, but who doesn't? But I'm showing up. Maybe I'm only at 80%, but I'm getting out of bed and I'm there and I seem coherent. So, like, is it bad enough? Is it bad enough for me to let myself do this? And I kind of compare it to kind of like breast cancer. Like if you found out you had stage 1 and you're like, but you know what? I'm still going to work. I'm still getting out of bed. I haven't died yet. So like, I'm just going to keep going to work and we'll deal with that. Maybe it'll just go away. Who knows? But I'm not going to worry about that until it's like stage 5. Stage 5 is so much more difficult to fix. Like, why would you wait till it gets so bad that it's a complex, difficult, overwhelmingly unreasonable challenge? Like, just deal with it when it's little. Take care of yourself. Take the
So I guess
time.
2 questions on that, Jillian.
Yeah.
One, like just the logistically, so like how do you afford it? Right? Like if you feel like it's coming and like and you haven't been planning for 5 years to have like money
Hmm.
set aside for it. There's that. But also on the FMLA question, like how do you approach that with whoever your provider is? Because there's medical stuff that needs to go into that.
Yep.
And I'm asking because I am somebody who, like, the world presented me a situation where I was forced to take time off,
Yeah.
and like during COVID, I ended up taking time off because, and I got I got short-term disability benefits or unemployment or something because my son had just come off of cancer treatment and I was the caregiver. But I was that person having panic attacks at work. And I was trying to figure out like how could I get somebody to like, can you like slap a like not equipped to work label on me so that I can like get the okay to not be here? And I
Yeah.
didn't really know how to navigate that. And I'm
Mhm.
a medical professional and I had providers, not a mental health provider, but like
Mhm.
even I couldn't figure that out. And I've met people who are like, yeah, I have like a psychiatrist who's like, you need to take 3 months off. And I'm like, you,
Yeah.
how? That's not
Yeah.
fair. I need
Yeah.
that. So how do you do that?
There's usually a form through your company that they need you to fill out that form. Um, and you can ask them, like, who needs to sign this? Um, Usually a therapist, a psychiatrist, sometimes your family care doctor. Um, I might ask my OBGYN because she signs everything for me. But
They're so great, aren't they?
she's like an all in one, a
Yeah.
one-stop shop. Um, but and I've had these people in the audience and they're like, "Yeah, we send those forms all day long. Like that's not a big deal. You're a little burned out, you're anxious, you're having panic attacks, you're depressed. Sign, sign, sign." They're like, "Do it early before you need like a residential treatment facility. Do it before you have a breakdown. Those are very complex, difficult problems to solve. If you're a little burned out, it's real easy to solve. Do some active rest, take a month or two off. Um, have the person sign the form, submit it to HR, see if they need any other paperwork. And that's usually about it. I actually had some of my group coaching. It was so funny. We were talking about negotiating it off, and she was like, "Well, I'll just say, I just did a 3-month mini retirement. I didn't even talk to my boss about it." And we were like, "Wait, what?" She was like, "No, I got the form, had my medical professional sign it, turned it in, never had a conversation with my boss. I didn't want to talk to him." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." She's
Well,
like,
that's one way to do it. If you get your FMLA form, like they can't ask you once it's medical.
Yeah,
To me,
especially a big company. Like if
yeah.
you're somebody who works in a, you know, corporate role where you're one of many, like, yeah, maybe you don't need to talk to them.
"Yeah,
But for me,
nope,
it
she
was
did it."
framing the conversation like I didn't, and this may be a unique thing sometimes to medical professionals where we don't recognize in ourselves that like we have a problem.
Yeah.
Even though I knew I had a problem, I was like, how do I present this to a doctor? Like, what do I say? I don't want to work right now. I'm like up at night vomiting. Like that doesn't feel bad enough. I wake up, I go to work. Why do I get to take a month off? Um,
Yeah.
so part of it wasn't like for me figuring out how to navigate it from work. It was like I didn't know how to have that conversation with my medical team because yeah, I get up, I go to work. That's what you do.
But the reality is, like, a lot of people with serious health problems could say the same. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have an
Yeah.
uncle who's like actively, like, at the end of his life with cancer, doing the radiation, doing the treatment, and he just goes to work every day. He's probably got like 3 to 6 months to live. But that's where he wants to be, so that's cool. Like, that's his choice. But like, getting your body to into the office is a real weird like bar to set as like this is what's optimal for my health. And the reality is with the economy shifting, when we had 40-year careers at the same company, that company had an investment in your longevity. They had an investment in your human capital because they wanted you to survive for 40 years. That's changed. Companies now do not expect you to survive for 40 years. So there is no long term investment in your human capital. They anticipate sometimes that you will burn out in 5 to 10 years. So their goal is just to run you into the ground in 5 to 10 years and then throw you away and hire the new one. So I was actually just talking to somebody who worked from SpaceX and they have a 5 year sabbatical program. Like after 5 years, you get a sabbatical. Um, and they're like, but they never had to give anyone a sabbatical because they burned through everyone before 5 years.
Uh,
So when everyone quits at 3 years, yeah, offer an amazing 5 year sabbatical program. That's hilarious. Like they're
this
gonna
is how I feel
burn
about
through your
the.
human capital.
That's how I feel
And
about unlimited PTO programs.
Oh, yeah.
we won't go down that rabbit hole. So we
Yeah.
are in like the last 5-10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we've been fielding some of the questions from the chat.
Yes.
We'll see if we have a few more minutes for those, but I did want to approach that like also like how do you afford it? Like it's one thing to get
Yes.
FMLA. FMLA may
Mm-hmm.
or may not be paid. You know, FMLA
Yep.
does not mean that you get short-term disability if that's even something that you have access to at work. Some people
Yep.
might, but it does protect your job while you take time off for
Mm-hmm.
usually up to 3 months annually,
Yep.
like every year you can apply,
Yeah. Yeah.
or a rotating year, I should say.
So there's a lot of
So yeah,
different
how do you afford it?
factors. One, looking at the cost of the thing you want to do. If you're early in your financial journey, I would front load the more affordable ones. And even if you want to like do a cool road trip and travel, it might be more affordable for you to travel than for you to live at home. You might be saving money by not being in your house. Like I interviewed someone on my podcast. They lived in Austin and they rented out their house and they went and traveled for 6 months. And just the amount they rented out their house covered their entire living cost for 6 months. Um and so it
Was
and
this
sometimes I
overseas?
know
Did they go out?
so
Did they
they
travel
did a
out of the
mix.
country?
Yep, out of the country. They did a mix of Southeast Asia and Switzerland, which is not super affordable, rather expensive. And if you go to the show notes on my thing, he logged every single expense, like every gelato, every cappuccino, every cab ride. It was like really impressive. They spent $9,400 per person for 6 months altogether. Um, I know people who do, is it the WOOF, the agricultural volunteers,
Mm.
to where you would get free housing and you might get to do this other kind of type of work that you're interested in. There's lots of ways to make that more affordable, that it might be more affordable than your current life. I had one client who was living in California and they quit their job. They were going to move to Michigan. So they finished out their lease. They put all of their stuff in storage while they traveled in South America. So they ended up saving, like it was way more affordable because they weren't paying their California rent while they were gone. Um, and then just picked up their stuff and moved to Michigan. The other thing is if you have this goal, even if it's just taking a month off. I was in I was in a medical receptionist place, and the receptionist, she was maybe 22. And she was just over the moon. She was like so excited. She was talking to all the patients and I get up there and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I did this amazing trip." And like she had gone this I live in Montana. This was her first time out of the state of Montana. And this was her first airplane ride. And she went to Peru for a month. Um a month. And like it was just absolute life changing. She was beside herself. But if you have that goal, it might make sense, maybe it'll take a year or 2 years, but if you have this tangible goal of this is going to be $3,000 or $5,000, like then taking on that extra work or shifting some of your spending now to that goal, you might be like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to sit, but like I get to go to Peru for a month. Maybe I'll dog sit twice a month. Um, and it starts to make more sense. Like you have more motivation to do those things. Um, at least in my area, dog sitting is like $150 a time. Like you can make an easy $300 a month dog sitting, just twice a month. And so at the end of the year, you've got, well, that's 3,600. And if you do that for 2 years, you've got like 7,000. Um, you could take a mini retirement every 2 years by dog sitting twice a month. Like, and maybe you're like, in the scheme of my life, that's a good trade off. I like dogs, I like travel. Win win.
And I feel like that's kind of where, the whole like intentional spending and saving, like across the
Mhm.
board, it's so much easier to not spend on random little stuff when you have like this big goal in mind.
Yeah.
So, like, if, you know, trying to save up for $1 million home, which is like not a big house in my area, it's like just like a very
Yeah.
basic one. Like, if that feels so far out of reach, then it's really easy to be like, well, I'm just going to get a coffee every day out of habit
Yeah.
because it's a little snippet of joy and it's nowhere enough to save for a house. But like, the coffee every day is enough to save for a pretty solid mini retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. I use the example of like if you get like a Chipotle burrito bowl every Friday that you eat at your desk for lunch, um, in 2 years, that would be 100 burrito bowls. Well, that would pay for 100 meals when you're in Mexico for a month learning Spanish. Like that's a
It's a
lot of
lot
street
more than 100
tacos.
meals.
It's a lot of street tacos and margaritas. Like, um, 3 meals a day for a month. You're not saving money. You're just postponing that same thing. You're not having the coffee now because you're gonna have the coffee in Paris when you're like outside of the Louvre. You're just moving that to hopefully something that feels like an upgrade. Maybe street tacos and margaritas are better than Chipotle burrito bowl at your desk on a Friday.
Regina looks like she's trying to unmute herself.
I
Yeah,
hit the
there you
button.
go.
I did drop something in the comments just as an FYI, like for some people, do explore a little bit more if you want to maybe do this kind of stuff overseas with some of your arrangements and see what the general sentiment is towards tourists right now, because a lot of effectively work share agreements where you get housing and or food in trade for providing some sort of labor, or potentially even dog sitting in Bali or something. Sometimes that's considered like getting compensation that is not in the form of money, which may violate a visa. And I think like it's very common and it happens, but there can be risks of like basically ending up getting yourself to where you might get deported for violating a visa or have a fine. And so just like be kind of aware and cautious of what things might be going on locally if you're going to do that. So we were
Yeah.
having that side conversation here in the chat.
I also want to give people, I know people have been asking questions as we go, but if you have any other final questions for Jillian, now would be a great time. Got some lovely comments in the chat saying thanks, and a lot of this advice is really great for talking to your company about anything, not even a mini retirement. And I think that's a really good point, is that like those like steps for that could not be a mini retirement, that could be going part-time, that could be going working some days remote. Like, we talked a lot about specifically stepping back fully, but thinking about your like working 10% if you're self-employed, I feel like there's also some opportunity for that sort of thing, even within a 9 to 5.
Yeah, and it's something I'd actually talk about
I
in the
did
book
also
is
just
that
drop in the chat the book giveaway for people who came late.
yeah.
I just dropped a link. I was typing it. We are giving away some copies of Jillian's book, so enter that giveaway if you would like a copy, maybe.
Sorry, go ahead, Jillian.
Oh, yeah, I mentioned that in the book of like how to use that same framework to negotiate something that's unusual. And I have found that once you start negotiating things where you're the exception to the rule, yeah, oftentimes you get to continue to be the exception to the rule. If you do well in that, and if everyone benefits from you being the exception to the rule, sometimes you can be the exception to a lot of rules. And you can just be like that person. Like, we don't know why she gets to do that, but she's like the one person. Um,
But
Yeah.
imagine if you successfully navigate that too and do the work to like make it easy for work to do it. Once they say yes once, even if you have to frame it like I'm never going to ask this again, it's a one-time thing. But like once you come back and it all worked smooth, the next time you ask,
oh,
it's probably easier to get them to say yes again.
yep, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today,
Yeah, thank
Jillian.
you
And
guys.
I feel like this is where I need to actually commit to a month away from at least my day job. So I guess I'll say that here. And
Yes.
maybe
After
I need to,
15 years, I think
I
I
know.
think you
Yeah.
deserve a month off.
Yeah. So maybe I need to figure this out for myself too and take that to heart. So really appreciate you coming and talking. And now I kind of want to, I'm going to throw up a thread both in Woven and in our WPF Insiders Discord. I want to hear about everybody's like longest steps away stories, because I think there are probably a lot of them, and a lot more than we realize. Kind of like I've been less than full time at my day job for almost 10 years now, and
Mm.
um, sharing that over the years, the number of other people who work in jobs I didn't realize that they weren't full time, they're like, oh, yeah, I actually do XYZ. And I think there's a lot more of this, like, not everybody does the 9 to 5 full time job thing straight through to retirement than we realize. But it's just not something that gets talked about a whole lot.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Any
questions for us or before you go? Any follow-up or anything for the audience we should leave them with? Last thoughts?
No, I think that's it. Retireoften.com if you want to like learn anything more. And on social media, I'm at Jillian Johnsrud. Just how my name is spelled right there. Yeah, those are probably the two best ways to connect. If you have any follow-up questions or anything, yeah, just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining
Thank
us
you,
tonight.
Jillian.
Yay, thank you.